Hi guys, so at the beginning of this week, Lord Frost believed he was at the zenith of his power. The Brexiteer government held their finger over the button to trigger Article 16, and they believed they held all the cards. Then on Wednesday, David Frost appeared in the House of Lords to do two things. First, to tell the EU to calm down, but also to take a step back from the button. It later emerged that his government had received a warning from Washington: do not mess with peace in Northern Ireland. The protocol must stay. Then on Friday we received the news that the European Union was happy to announce that there had been a change in tone in talks with the UK over the protocol. So it seems Lord Frost was put back in his box, at least for now. Both the UK and the EU have agreed that their focus will be on medicines and customs checks. The thorny issue of the European Court of Justice has been shelved, at least for now, which has been seen as taking a step away from the brink. I find this funny. Lord Frost has been banging on for months now, not days or weeks, but for months, that the tests for triggering Article 16 have been met. His boss Boris Johnson gets a phone call from the US, and all of a sudden Article 16 is old news. Frost, following his meeting with the European Commission, made no reference to Article 16 or its triggering, which does reinforce the idea that it has been taken off the table. The EU viewed the latest round of talks in a very positive light. The Vice President of the European Commission, Maros Šefčovič, described the issue of delivering medicines from Great Britain to Northern Ireland as low-hanging fruit, meaning that there is little or no disagreement between the parties. It also meant that wider agreement could be made. He told the media, and I quote, "I acknowledge and welcome the change in tone of discussion with David Frost today, and I hope this will lead to tangible results for the people in Northern Ireland." Johnson had been planning to trigger Article 16, or at least that was what he wanted the public to think. This would likely have triggered a trade war with the European Union, and it's possible that the Prime Minister, feeling weakened by the current corruption scandal, didn't want to throw himself into a damaging battle with the European Union, which would likely backfire and damage his public standing even further. Frost and Johnson miscalculated the European Union's response. They had hoped that Brussels would capitulate, and then the Irish government would pressure them into doing so too. However, Johnson has called wolf too many times. The Irish government have seen that he's weakened, and they're not willing to beg the European Commission for concessions in order to protect peace in Northern Ireland. The view of the Northern Ireland Protocol in Northern Ireland has changed also over the last number of months. It has continually been seen in a positive light. Even unionist business leaders are coming out in favour of it. The voices against the protocol, while loud, are growing fewer in number. Ireland stood by the EU by saying that there would be no choice but to put up barriers if the TCA was suspended in a trade war. Tory MPs in the so-called Red Wall, and also others further afield, who had been elected on getting Brexit done, so it would have been difficult for them to explain a trade war which would have seen many businesses in their constituencies, for example, suffering even more under a new type of Brexit. In regards to medicines, the European Commission has said that they will face checks to ensure that they comply to European standards. Of this, Vice President Šefčovič said, and I quote, "If our experts put their mind to it, they can resolve it within a week. I really believe so, because we are so close." The European Commission seems very upbeat about all of this. It seems like Boris Johnson's game of chicken has failed. He had hoped that the EU would blink at the threat of triggering Article 16, but instead they replied with suspending the TCA, imposing new checks, and perhaps creating more problems at the border. This, along with a phone call from the United States, was too much for Boris Johnson to stomach. To reinforce this point, the UK government in its statement made no reference to the ECJ, which had been one of the red lines. This would mean that they have backed off, at least for now. On the European Court, on our side, definitely nothing's changed, Mr. Šefčovič said instead. While differences remain, the biggest stumbling block was the European Court of Justice. Of course, the ECJ issue was just a ploy by Frost and his boss. It was never really a problem for them. If it was, they wouldn't have signed the agreement in the first place. Going forward, Lord Frost is likely to pull the ECJ out of the hat once again, although unlikely. However, he may seek to find something else in the agreement to use as a sticking point. Something that will be held up as a necessity to trigger Article 16 all over again. The real losers here are the likes of the DUP and the traditional unionist voice. They had hoped once again that Boris Johnson would be their knight in shining armour. He would face down the EU, trigger Article 16 and suspend the protocol. Johnson has done neither. But that doesn't mean that the DUP and others in Northern Ireland will keep hoping that Boris Johnson lives up to his promises to them. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.